My name is Rick Halverson, and at 3:07 a.m. on the 14th floor of a Honolulu hotel, my stepson kicked my door until it burst inward. Then my wife stepped into the splinters and whispered like I was the problem, "Just give him what he wants." For a second, I couldn't move. Not because I was scared of Evan Mercer was 28 and loud, not tough, but because the sound of that door breaking did something inside me. It wasn't just wood. It was a line, a boundary, one I'd spent years trying to keep straight in a marriage that always wanted to bend. The hallway outside was dead quiet in that special hotel way, carpeted silence, soft air conditioning, the distant hum of an elevator somewhere. Then Evan filled it with his drunk breath and rage. "I want that room." Now he shouted like he owned the whole floor. He wore board shorts and a cheap black tank top, the kind you buy at a tourist shop. His eyes were red. His hair stuck up like he'd been sleeping, but I knew he hadn't. I could smell the bar on him, beer, something sugary, and that sharp bite of tequila. The kind of smell that crawls into your nose and tells you trouble is already here. Linda stood behind him barefoot in a robe, her hair pulled into a messy knot. Her face was pinched, tired, annoyed. Annoyed at me, not him. "Rick," she said, using that tone she saved for when she wanted something from me, without looking like she wanted it. "Don't make this worse. Just switch rooms. He's upset." Upset. Like a grown man kicking down a door at 3 in the morning was a mood swing. I stared at her, and she didn't meet my eyes. She stared at the broken latch like she was already deciding how to explain it to the front desk. Evan pointed past me into my room at the king bed by the window. The curtains were half open. Outside, Honolulu glowed streetlights, moving dots of cars, the black line of the ocean in the distance. It was supposed to be romantic. It looked like a postcard. In that moment, it looked like a stage set for a humiliation. "That one," Evan said. "That's the room I'm taking." "This is our room," I said, and my voice sounded strange to me too. Calm, too flat, like I was listening to myself from across the room. Evan's mouth twisted. "Not anymore." Linda finally looked at me, and her eyes had that familiar mix of pressure and pity. The look that said, "Be the bigger man. Be the adult. Pay the price so we can all go back to pretending." "Rick," she said again, softer, almost pleading. "You know he's been having a hard time. Don't be selfish over a bed." Selfish. That word landed like a slap because it wasn't about a bed. It was about everything I'd been swallowing for years. The tickets, the rent Evan couldn't cover, the temporary loans that never came back. The way Linda could always find a reason Evan's behavior wasn't really his fault, and somehow I was always the one expected to absorb it. I didn't answer. I just stood there in my t-shirt and pajama shorts with the cool air hitting my legs, feeling the floor steady under my feet, while everything else shifted. Behind Evan, someone opened a door down the hall. A man's head popped out, eyes narrowed, then disappeared again. I heard a latch click. Nobody wanted to be involved. I looked at the broken door frame. The wood was split clean where the latch had been. A sliver of oak dangled like a loose tooth. The hinge creaked under the pressure of the door hanging wrong. And without meaning to, my brain did what it always did. It started sorting the scene like a file. Damage, liability, a forced entry, not a simple noise complaint. If security got called, they'd write an incident report. They'd note who was registered to the room. They'd check cameras. They always check cameras. I'd spent 30 years reading the fine print of accidents people swore weren't their fault. I'd audited claims from hurricanes and kitchen fires and slip and falls in grocery store aisles. People could cry and yell all they wanted. The paperwork didn't care. I walked to the dresser, opened the top drawer, and pulled out my little black notebook. It wasn't big. It fit in my jacket pocket. I'd carried something like it since the 80s, back when my first boss taught me the value of writing things down the moment they happened. I clicked my Parker pen, an old silver one my father gave me when I got promoted, and wrote, 3:07 a.m. Evan kicked door in. Demanded room. Linda present. Evan blinked at me. "What are you doing?" "Remembering," I said. Linda's brows pulled together. "Rick, don't do that. Come on." She always hated when I got quiet like that, when I got procedural. She liked emotions she could steer. My silence was a wall she couldn't climb. Evan stepped forward, chest puffed out. "Move, I'm taking it." I looked at him for a long second. I thought about grabbing him by the collar and shoving him back into the hallway. I thought about raising my voice, letting the whole floor hear how ridiculous this was. I thought about how satisfying it would feel for maybe 10 seconds. And then I thought about the cameras. I thought about how quickly a man my age becomes the villain in someone else's story if there's no proof. I thought about how Linda would twist it later, how she'd say I lost it, how Evan would claim I came at him, and how the truth would get fuzzy the moment it had to pass through their mouths. I stepped back. Not because I was giving in. Because I was stepping out. Fine, I said. Evan's face lit up with smug relief like he'd won something. Like he'd always believed he would. Linda let out a breath like I'd finally behaved. Thank you, she said, and she meant it. She meant thank you for not forcing her to choose in the moment. She meant thank you for making it easier for her. I didn't reply. I walked to the closet and pulled my suitcase out from under the hanging shirts. I moved slowly, deliberately. I folded my clothes with neat corners the way my mother taught me. I packed my belt, my toothbrush, my shaving kit. Evan shoved past me into the room and flopped onto the bed like a teenager claiming the couch. He kicked off his flip-flops and laughed to himself. I could hear the ocean in the distance when the AC cycled down a faint rush behind the city noise. I could also hear my heartbeat steady and hard like it had something to prove. Linda hovered in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me pack. She didn't offer to help. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look embarrassed. You're being dramatic, she said, like she couldn't stand the quiet. It's one night. One night, I repeated, and my voice stayed level. Sure. I zipped the suitcase, picked it up, and walked past her into the hall. The carpet under my bare feet felt rougher out there, like it wasn't meant for skin. The hallway lights were dim yellowish, set low to keep things calm. The calm felt insulting. Linda followed me 2 steps. Where are you going? I turned to face her. Evan was already laughing in the room behind her, muttering something about finally. I wanted to say 100 things. I wanted to tell her I'd spent years being the adult in a house that kept rewarding childish cruelty. I wanted to tell her that a man can only bend so many times before he stays bent. Instead, I said somewhere with a lock. Her mouth fell open. For a second, I saw real offense in her eyes, not guilt, not worry. Offense. Like I'd insulted her, not like she'd just watched her son break into our room. Rick, she started. I didn't wait for the rest. I walked toward the elevator with my suitcase rolling behind me, the broken door still yawning open like a wound back there. The elevator arrived with a soft ding. The doors slid open. I stepped inside and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, Linda's face was the last thing I saw standing in the hall, wrapped in a robe, looking at me like I'd just embarrassed her in public. The elevator descended smoothly, floor numbers ticking down. 14, 13, 12. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. A text from Linda, "Don't do anything stupid." I stared at those words. I hadn't even done anything yet. But I knew in that quiet drop toward the lobby that I was done paying for other people's peace. And I also knew something else, something colder and clearer than anger. When you kick down a door, you don't get to decide what happens next. The lobby was almost empty when I rolled my suitcase across the marble floor. It was that strange hour hotels live in between, too late for night, too early for morning. The chandeliers were dimmed. A single couple dozed on a sofa near the elevators, their sandals kicked off, heads tilted together. Somewhere behind the desk, a printer hummed and stopped. The night clerk looked up when he heard the wheels. He was young, mid-20s maybe, with a neatly pressed uniform and eyes that had already seen too many versions of the same story. He didn't ask why I was checking out at 4 a.m. He just straightened and smiled the way hotels train you to smile. "Good morning, sir." I stopped at the desk and set my suitcase upright. I felt the weight of it in my hand, the solid reassurance of something that was still mine to carry. "I need to make a change to my account," I said. "Yes, sir." "I need to split the folio," I said slowly and clearly. "Effective immediately." He blinked once. Not confused, just recalibrating. "Certainly," he said. "May I have your room number?" 1402, I said, but starting now that room is no longer tied to my card. His fingers paused over the keyboard. "Sir, are you checking out?" "Yes." "And the remaining guests?" "They'll handle their own charges." He nodded professional. "One moment." I watched his screen from a distance. You learn in my line of work how to watch without staring. I saw the cursor move, fields populate. Names, dates, authorization codes. The quiet machinery of accountability coming online. May I confirm, he said, glancing up, that all future incidentals for room 1402 should be removed from your authorization. That's correct. And damages. That's also correct. He hesitated just for a fraction of a second. Sir, there was a... I'm aware, I said. That's why I'm here. He nodded again. Understood. He typed for another minute, then slid a paper across the desk. Please review and sign. I read it carefully. Timestamp. Authorization removed. Responsibility transferred. Clean. Proper. I signed. As I handed the paper back, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief exactly. More like alignment, like a joint slipping back where it belonged. Thank you, the clerk said. If you need assistance with transportation to the airport, I'll handle it. I stepped outside into the warm night air. Hawaii smelled different at that hour, salt flowers, a hint of garbage from somewhere unseen. The valet stand was empty, but an Uber pulled up within minutes. I loaded my suitcase and slid into the back seat. As we pulled away, I looked up at the hotel. 14 floors of light and glass. Somewhere up there, my wife and her son were probably celebrating, already rewriting the story in their heads. Rick gave in. Rick always gives in. My phone buzzed again. Linda, where are you going? I didn't answer. The driver chatted about traffic and flights. I nodded in the right places, my thoughts drifting back through the years like a slow reel. Evan at 16 slamming doors in our house in Fort Wayne. Evan at 22 calling me from a county lot because his car had been impounded. Evan at 26 swearing he'd pay me back this time. Each time Linda had said the same thing. He's trying. He's sensitive. Don't push him. And each time I'd paid, money, silence, dignity. The airport was quiet too. A few red-eyed travelers hunched over coffee. A janitor pushed a mop across tile that shone under fluorescent lights. I checked in, printed my boarding pass, and sat at the gate with my suitcase between my feet. I pulled out my notebook and wrote another line. 4:21 a.m. left property, folio split. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a voicemail. Linda's voice spilled out tight and annoyed. Rick, this is ridiculous. Evan's just drunk. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Call me. I turned the phone face down. When the plane boarded, I took a window seat. As we lifted off, the lights of Honolulu stretched and scattered, then disappeared into black. I watched until there was nothing left to see. Somewhere over the Pacific, my phone vibrated again. Another voicemail. This one's sharper. You can't just abandon us, Linda said. You're acting like a child. I closed my eyes and breathed until the engines became a steady roar instead of a pressure in my skull. My chest felt tight, not panic exactly, but a warning. The kind you don't ignore at my age. I loosened my collar and reminded myself to drink water. By the time we landed back on the mainland, I'd made up my mind about one thing. I wasn't going to argue. Back in Fort Wayne, the air felt heavier, cooler, familiar. I drove straight to the credit union after dropping my suitcase at the house. The teller knew me by name. She asked if I wanted my usual. Yes, I said, and I need to put a temporary hold on a card. She didn't ask why. As she worked, my phone lit up again, a text this time. Linda, the hotel is saying Evan has to pay for the door. Fix this. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I put my phone back in my pocket and signed the form in front of me. I wasn't fixing anything anymore. I didn't go straight home after the credit union. I sat in my car for a minute in the parking lot engine, off hands resting on the wheel, letting the quiet settle. Fort Wayne was waking up around me, delivery trucks backing up with their warning beeps, a woman unlocking the door to the bakery across the street, steam fogging the windows. This was the part people never see. They imagine revenge as a switch. You flip a speech, you give a door, you slam on the way out. But real consequences start smaller. They start with paperwork. I drove to my office instead. It was a low brick building on the edge of town, nothing fancy. I'd worked there long enough that the smell of it, coffee, toner, old carpet, felt like muscle memory. I unlocked my door, turned on the lights, and set my suitcase down beside my desk. On the wall behind me hung framed certificates most people never read. Licenses, continuing education credits, boring things, the kind of things you only notice when they're missing. I sat down, opened my laptop, and pulled up the hotel reservation. 1402, my name, Linda's name, dates, rates, and there it was, the quiet detail I'd already suspected. Evan wasn't on the original guest list. Linda had added him later. I could see the timestamp, a late add-on hours after I'd booked the room. It was the kind of thing most people never think about. They assume a room is a room, a guest is a guest. It doesn't work that way. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. This wasn't about catching someone in a trap. It was about understanding how responsibility actually works when things go wrong. I drafted an email to the hotel's risk management department. Not angry, not accusatory, clean. Requesting preservation of security footage and a copy of the incident report related to room 1402 early morning hours. I attached my confirmation number. I signed my name. Then I waited. While I waited, my phone rang. Linda. I let it go to voicemail. Another call came in right after, a number I didn't recognize. I answered. This is Rick, I said. Mr. Halverson, a man said, voice careful. This is Daniel Ortiz, assistant manager at the hotel in Honolulu. Yes, I said. I'm calling to follow up regarding the incident this morning. I closed my eyes. Here it was. We've documented the damage, he continued. There's a question about responsibility. Go on, I said. The individual involved, your stepson, was not listed as a registered guest at the time of booking. I didn't react. I let him keep talking. That changes how we classify the incident, he said. We wanted to confirm that you are no longer authorizing charges related to that room. That's correct, I said. A pause, papers shifting on his end. Thank you for clarifying, he said. We'll proceed accordingly. Send me the report when it's finalized, I said. Yes, sir. When the call ended, I sat there staring at my desk. The grain in the wood looked darker than usual. My reflection stared back at me from the blank computer screen for a second before the email notification popped up. From Risk Management Hotel Honolulu, Subject Incident Documentation Room 1402. I opened it. There it was, the report, timestamps, staff statements, damage assessment, a note about security footage showing a male subject forcing entry. No mention of provocation, no mention of a struggle. Just facts. My phone buzzed again. A text from Evan this time. Evan, you think you're smart? You can't just leave us like that. I didn't reply. I forwarded the incident report to myself, printed a copy, and slid it into a manila folder. On the tab, I wrote one word. Hawaii. I wasn't enjoying this. That's the part people always get wrong. There was no rush, no satisfaction. Just a steady, uncomfortable sense of things lining up whether I wanted them to or not. I thought about calling Linda. I thought about smoothing it over, explaining how we could fix this together. I thought about how easy it would be to step back into my old role, the one who absorbs the mess so everyone else can pretend it didn't happen. Then I thought about that door, about the sound it made when it broke, about the way Linda had looked past me, not at me, about how small I'd felt standing there in my own room like I was asking permission to exist. I checked my email again. Another message had come in, this one from the credit card company. Confirmation of removed authorization. No further charges permitted. Clean. My phone rang again. Linda, I answered this time. What did you do? She demanded, not even saying hello. I did exactly what I said I would. I said, they're saying Evan has to pay for everything she said. The door, the security response, everything. He doesn't have that kind of money. That's not my problem, I said, and the words surprised me with how easy they came out. You're punishing him, she said. No, I said, I'm stopping. She went quiet. I could hear her breathing fast and shallow. You always do this, she said finally. You hide behind paperwork. I looked at the folder on my desk, the neat lines, the dates. I hide behind the truth, I said. There's a difference. She hung up. I sat there for a long time after that, staring at the phone in my hand. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. I was tired. Tired of paying to keep the peace. Tired of explaining basic respect to a grown man. Tired of being told silence meant weakness. I closed the folder and slid it into a drawer. This wasn't over. I could feel that. The ripples were already spreading outward, touching things I hadn't planned on touching. Work, church, community, the places where stories grow legs. But for the first time in years, I wasn't trying to stop them. The phone rang just after 6 that evening, while I was standing in my kitchen staring at the refrigerator without really seeing it. I'd been home less than an hour. My suitcase still sat by the door, like it didn't trust me to stay. I looked at the screen. Linda! I let it ring twice before answering. What now? I said, not sharp, not gentle, just flat. Her voice came through thin and tight, like she was holding it together with her teeth. Rick, we have a problem. I leaned back against the counter. We've had a problem for a long time. This is different, she said quickly. Evan's freaking out. The hotel says... I know what the hotel says. There was a pause. I could picture her standing in that room in Hawaii, pacing on tile, one hand on her hip, the other clutching her phone like it might rescue her. They're treating it like vandalism, she said. Not a guest incident. They're saying his name wasn't on the original booking. That's because it wasn't, I said. You knew. Her voice jumped. You knew that would happen. I knew how it would be classified, I said. I didn't decide it. She exhaled hard. Rick, he was drunk. He didn't mean to. He kicked a door in at 3 a.m, I said. That's not a misunderstanding. Before she could answer, another voice cut in closer to the phone, louder. Put me on, Evan said. There was a scuffle, the muffled sound of Linda protesting, and then Evan's breathing filled my ear. Fast, angry, too close. You think you're real clever, he said. Running away, locking accounts. You can't do this to me. I didn't do anything to you, I said. You left us, he snapped. You humiliated us. I waited. Silence is a tool if you know how to use it. You owe me, he continued, his voice rising. You've always owed me. You married my mom. You signed up for this. I looked at the wall clock above the stove. The second hand moved in steady, patient clicks. Evan, I said, finally, do you know what the cameras show? He laughed, sharp and brittle. What cameras? I told them. What happened? Yes, I said. You told them. The laughter stopped. They show you alone in the hallway, I continued. They show you kicking the door. They show no one touching you. Another pause, longer this time. That's not, he started. And the incident report notes you weren't a registered guest, I said, which changes how responsibility works. You're threatening me, he said. No, I said, I'm informing you. Linda's voice broke back in. Rick, please. He didn't understand what he was doing. Can you help us straighten this out? That word again, help. I closed my eyes and felt the weight of the day settle into my shoulders. I thought about the emails I'd already sent, the forms I'd signed, the way the machine was moving now, without my hands on it. There's something else, I said. Linda went quiet. I've seen this pattern before, I continued. Someone drinks, something breaks. Then there's a story about being pushed or attacked or losing something valuable. A claim follows. Paperwork gets messy. Evan exploded. You accusing me of fraud? I'm saying I won't be part of anything that looks like it, I said. Not with my name on the booking, not with my career. Linda sucked in a breath. Rick, what are you talking about? I'm talking about protecting myself, I said, because I won't lie for this. Evan swore. I heard something slam, maybe a chair, maybe a door. Linda started crying, the sound sharp and sudden. You're tearing this family apart, she said through it. I felt that familiar pull in my chest, the urge to soften, to apologize, to fix the feeling instead of the problem. I'd followed that instinct for years. No, I said quietly, I'm stopping it from tearing me apart. Evan shouted something I couldn't make out. Then the line went dead. I stood there for a long moment, phone pressed to my ear, even after the call ended. The kitchen felt too quiet. The hum of the refrigerator sounded loud, intrusive. My phone buzzed again almost immediately, a new email. From Mercer Legal Services, subject, notice of intent. I opened it slowly. It was thinly worded, vague, a threat without teeth yet, accusations of abandonment, financial harm, emotional distress. I read it once, then again. I felt my pulse pick up, not fear exactly, but the old professional alertness kicking in. This was familiar territory, bluster before substance. I forwarded the email to my work account and added it to the Hawaii folder. Then I sat down at the table and stared at the wood grain until it stopped swimming. This was the moment things could still go either way. I could call Linda back, offer to pay part of the damages, smooth the edges. I could make it all go quieter. But quieter had a cost, it always did. I opened my notebook and wrote one more line. 6:42 p.m. legal threat received, no response sent. I capped the pen and set it down. Outside, the sky over Fort Wayne was turning that dull Midwest gray, the kind that settles in for the evening without drama. Somewhere down the block, a garage door rattled shut. Normal life moving on. I didn't feel victorious, I felt clear. And clarity, I was learning, was far more dangerous than anger. By the time Linda and Evan flew back from Hawaii, the story had already started walking around without them. That's how it works in a place like Fort Wayne. You don't have to tell anyone anything. You just stop correcting them, and the truth finds its own shoes. I found out the morning after they landed when I went to Meijer for groceries. I was standing in the coffee aisle staring at a wall of brands that all promised the same thing when I heard my name. Rickety Soren. I turned. It was Paul Hendricks from church, late 60s, retired machinist. We'd sat 3 pews apart for years without ever saying much more than hello. Morning, I said. He nodded, eyes soft but curious. Linda back? Yes, I said. Late last night. He hesitated. That pause told me everything. Rough trip, he asked. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out the folded incident report, and handed it to him. I didn't explain. I didn't add context. I just let the paper speak. He read it slowly, his jaw tightened, not in anger but recognition. Huh, he said finally. Well, that's something. He handed it back. Sorry you had to deal with that. Thank you, I said. That was it. No gossip, no judgment, just acknowledgement. By noon, I got a text from a number I hadn't seen in years. You did the right thing. Marcy L. VFW Auxiliary. By evening, Linda came home. She dropped her suitcase in the hallway and stood there like she didn't recognize the place. The house was clean, quiet, exactly how I'd left it. We need to talk, she said. We can, I said, after dinner. She scoffed. You're acting like this is normal. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She looked tired, worn down, older than she had in Hawaii. This is normal, I said. What happened there wasn't. She followed me into the living room, arms crossed tight across her chest. Do you know what people are saying, she asked. I know what the paper says, I replied. That's enough. You embarrassed us, she said. The church board called. They asked about the travel fund. That was new. I felt a small, cold click in my chest. What travel fund, I asked. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes flicked toward the window. The one for the youth retreat, she said finally. Some of the money was used for the Hawaii trip. Temporarily. Evan was supposed to pay it back. I sat down slowly. How much, I asked. She shook her head. Rick, don't do this. How much, I repeated. 4,000, she whispered. I exhaled through my nose, not loud, just steady. And whose name was on that account, I asked. She didn't have to say it. Mine. I stood up, walked to the desk, and opened the Hawaii folder. I pulled out the incident report and laid it on the table between us. I'm not covering this, I said. Her face crumpled. You're leaving me to deal with all of it? No, I said. I'm letting you deal with it. She cried then, loud shaking sobs that used to undo me, not this time. That night I slept in the guest room. The bed was smaller. The pillow smelled faintly of laundry soap and dust. I slept anyway. The next day the consequences spread wider. Evan's employer called Linda about his behavior during company leave. A rumor surfaced at the diner about a vacation incident. The church scheduled an emergency meeting about the fund. I didn't attend. Instead, I sat at my desk and waited. On Thursday afternoon, I got an email from the mediation center downtown. Mandatory attendance requested. Linda had initiated it. I printed the email and slid it into the folder. That evening, a knock came at the door. It was Tom Willis, my neighbor from 2 houses down. He held a 6-pack of root beer. Figured you might need company, he said. We sat on the porch as the sun went down, not talking much, just watching the streetlights come on. You okay, he asked eventually. I am, I said, for the first time in a while. He nodded. Sometimes stopping is the hardest thing. I looked at the front door, solid, locked. I thought about the one in Hawaii, how easy it had been to break. I knew the next step would be public. I knew it would hurt. But I also knew something else. I wasn't alone anymore. The mediation room smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet, the kind of place designed to make people talk without feeling important. It sat on the 2nd floor of a brick building downtown across from the courthouse with a flag in the corner that had clearly seen better decades. I arrived 10 minutes early. That wasn't strategy, that was habit. I sat at the long table and set my folder down in front of me, square with the edge. My notebook went to the right. The Parker pen rested on top. Everything lined up the way it was supposed to. When your life starts feeling crooked, straight lines help. Linda came in first. She looked like she'd dressed for a job interview, navy blazer, low heels, hair pulled back tight. Her eyes flicked to the folder, then away. Evan followed her in late, shoulders hunched forward like he was already bracing for a fight. He wore a wrinkled button-down and scuffed sneakers. He didn't look at me. He dropped into a chair and crossed his arms. The mediator introduced herself, explained the ground rules, asked everyone to be respectful. I listened. Evan didn't. So let's just say it, Evan snapped before she'd finished. He left us. He locked us out of money. He humiliated us in Hawaii and back home. That's what this is about. The mediator turned to me. Mr. Halverson. I didn't answer right away. I opened my folder. Inside were copies, incident report, time-stamped folio change, email confirmations, and the printed statement from the hotel manager. I laid them out one by one, slow and visible. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm here to clarify what happened. Evan laughed, sharp and ugly. You think waving papers around makes you right? I looked at him. Really looked. He was sweating already, jaw working like he wanted to bite through the moment. Let's start with the timeline, I said. I slid the first page forward. 3:07 a.m., I continued. Security footage shows Evan in the hallway outside room 1402. He kicks the door. The door breaks inward. No one else touches it. Evan shifted in his chair. That's not how... I'm not finished, I said calmly. The mediator raised a hand toward Evan. He scoffed but leaned back. 3:09, I went on. Front desk receives a noise complaint from another guest. 3:13, security arrives. 3:15, damage is documented. I paused. 3:17, I said. I exit the room with my suitcase. Linda stared at the table. I slid the next page forward. This is the guest registration, I said. My name, Linda's name, original booking time. Evan's name is not here. That doesn't mean anything, Evan snapped. It means everything, I said. I turned to the mediator. Responsibility follows registration. He wasn't a registered guest at the time of entry. I slid the next document forward. This is the incident report. It classifies the damage as vandalism by an unregistered individual. Not a guest accident. That's not my wording. Evan stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly across the floor. You're doing this on purpose, he shouted. You planned this. You wanted me to get screwed. The mediator stood. Sir, please sit down. You ruined my life, Evan yelled, pointing at me. You could have paid. You always paid. The room went quiet. That sentence hung in the air, heavier than anything else he'd said. I looked at him, then back at the papers. No, I said, I didn't ruin your life. I closed the folder and folded my hands on top of it. I stopped paying for your mistakes. Evan opened his mouth, then closed it. His face flushed red. There's a difference, I added. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lean forward. I let the words land and sit. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The mediator cleared her throat. Mr. Mercer, there's also a statement from the hotel staff regarding your account of events. She picked up a printed page from her own stack and read aloud. The guest attempted to reframe the incident as a physical altercation. Review of footage did not support this claim. Evan laughed too loud. They're lying. The mediator continued. Further, the guest requested documentation for a personal claim unrelated to the property damage. Linda looked up sharply. What claim? Evan spun toward her. It's nothing. I finally looked at Linda. This is what I meant, I said. This is why I stepped away. Evan slammed his fist on the table. You think you're better than me? You think you're some hero because you write things down. No, I said. I think you've never had to live with the consequences of what you do. That's not true, he shouted. Then sit down and listen, the mediator said firmly. Evan dropped back into his chair, breathing hard. I opened my notebook and read the last line I'd written. 6:42 p.m., I said. Legal threat received. No response sent. I looked at Evan. I didn't retaliate. I didn't attack you. I didn't spread rumors. I looked at Linda. I stopped lying. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't come here to win, I said. I came here to be done. The mediator nodded slowly. Based on the documentation, responsibility for the damages rests with Mr. Mercer. Mr. Halverson is not obligated to cover these costs. Evan let out a strangled sound, somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Linda whispered, Rick. I stood up. This is where my involvement ends, I said. Financially, legally, emotionally. I picked up my folder and notebook, slid the pen into my pocket. As I walked toward the door, Evan shouted after me, You think this makes you strong? I stopped with my hand on the handle. I didn't turn around. I think it makes me free, I said. Then I opened the door and stepped out into the hallway, leaving the noise behind me. The house felt different after the mediation. Not empty or cleaner, like a room after furniture's been moved out and the dust has finally settled enough for you to see the floor again. Linda didn't come home that night. She texted to say she was staying with a friend from church. I replied with a simple, "Okay," no argument, no follow-up. I put my phone face down on the table and left it there. In the days that followed, I did what I'd always done best. I made lists, accounts to separate, authorizations to close, automatic payments to cancel. I didn't rush it. I didn't drag it out. I treated my marriage the way I treated a complicated audit, methodical, respectful, and honest about what was no longer viable. When Linda and I finally sat down to talk, it wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no accusations. Just two people realizing the same truth from different ends of the table. "I don't know who you are anymore," she said quietly. I nodded, "I do." That was the moment we both understood there was no fixing this. You can repair a door. You can't repair a boundary once it's been crossed and denied. The divorce was clean. No court theatrics, no revenge spending, just signatures, dates, and a final transfer that felt more like relief than loss. Evan never spoke to me again. I didn't reach out. A few weeks later, I sat down with my retirement planner. Same guy I'd been seeing for years. Same office, same frame photos of his kids on the desk. "You know," he said, tapping his calculator with these changes, "you could step back earlier than we planned." "How much earlier?" I asked. He smiled. 4, maybe 5 years. I thought about that for a long moment. 5 years of mornings without tension. 5 years without waiting for the next crisis. 5 years bought not with overtime or luck, but with the simple decision to stop paying for chaos. On a quiet Sunday morning, I sat in my living room with a cup of black coffee. The good kind I'd always told myself was too expensive. The house was silent except for the soft tick of the wall clock. Outside, Fort Wayne moved at its usual pace. Lawns getting mowed, a dog barking 2 houses down, a delivery truck idling at the corner. I looked at my front door. Solid, undamaged, locked the way a door is supposed to be. For years, I'd confused peace with endurance. I thought being a good man meant absorbing whatever came my way and smiling through it. I was wrong. Peace has a cost, so does silence. The difference is who pays it. If this story struck a nerve, if you've ever been told to just let it go while someone keeps kicking at your boundaries, I hope you remember this: you're allowed to stop. You're allowed to close the door. And you don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing your own dignity. If you believe more people need to hear that, share this story with someone who might be carrying too much in silence. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about quiet strength, hard choices, and the long road back to self-respect, consider subscribing and staying a while. Sometimes the bravest thing a man can do isn't fighting back. It's stepping away and not paying anymore.